Hello, Layla. Hello, Layla. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hello. Karne,
Hi.
Yes.
hello. So we're just going to test the video, playing the video on
Okay.
this side. Yes, so when it's time to play the video,
Oh,
I think you'll just let us know and we shall play that.
okay.
Yes, and then for the links, I think we shall share those on chat.
Okay.
At the
That's
times
good.
we share them. Okay.
So I can't hear. Am I supposed to be hearing? The
Yes,
sound is not
towards
coming through on this side.
Yes, not yet. I'm just testing. Yes, this is it. Huh? So let me it's here. Regret something. Regret. No, I'm coming to set up. Just a second. Push she'll mention it. Yeah, not recording. No, it needs to first process. Yeah. So maybe in like 10 or 15 minutes. So it's on. Connected. Nicholas, put your phone on mute. Touch the. So at what point should we play the video? Will we have a cue? Is it at the start or at a particular point in the video?
It's at a particular point.
Okay.
Let me think about this. Actually, let's do it at the beginning, just so that there's space, so that we don't get too confused.
Oh,
but then in the
okay.
middle is the Mentimeter poll. That is the one that needs some work, because everybody needs to take the link on their phone, fill out the poll, and then it'll project on the screen.
So with the poll, I think to view the results, I think you will share your screen to show the view that shows the results. And
okay,
then
just a second, just a minute, sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, you were explaining about the poll, because I don't know if I'll be able to see it, will I?
Yes.
Charlene had said that she set up the poll.
Yes, and yes, and she sent links for people to follow. So we shall just share those links in chat. The chat, so they can just click the link and take the poll.
Okay.
Yes, by doing that.
But I'm wondering, where will the results show? Because they're supposed to come. Do we then go to the Mentimeter site, or how does it work?
Exactly. The person that set up the poll is the one that has access to the results. I'd assume that that was you.
Oh,
so
no, it was Charlene.
Because it has to be. That means that we might need to get her on the call, because she's the one that can display the results. So she'd need to share her screen. Karen, do you by any chance have a contact?
So,
Karen.
Yes, I do have a contact. I have a contact.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I want it to be something in the middle for the transition. Huh?
Okay.
So we're going to move from one segment to the other by doing the poll in the middle.
Yeah, but they've not started yet. The login details from yesterday, it's exactly the same.
Akbar.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So
now this seminar format is a bit different. Because in theory, people are supposed to read. We're supposed to read together in a seminar.
Okay.
So let's see how it goes. Is it the first seminar you have?
No. We've had others, although it's just been presentations and the speakers.
Okay,
Yes.
let's see how it goes.
Yes. So how do you envision the poll going? How do you usually
so
hold
what we
it?
usually do is so everybody gets the link, and we say right now everybody go through the questions, and then they're displayed one after the other on the poll. So we might want to do, in this case, just to make it interactive, they might have to do one question, then we get the answers. One question, then we get the answers, like that.
Okay.
If it makes sense, because I think they're about 9. Huh?
Okay. Then after that, you display the results.
Yes, and then we for each question, and then we go into another segment. So it's supposed to be to tee up for the next segment. What time do we start? When are we expecting the guests?
They should be joining now. I'm not certain why they have not joined yet. Karine, you had reached out to them?
Yes, the one is already joining already. So
Okay.
Laila, I'm going to send you the link I received from Charlene, just to confirm that they're the ones.
Yes.
Okay.
The links, but yeah.
They're both Mentimeter, right?
Yes, they are. So
Yes, those are them. I think our challenge is more how to run it when it comes. Because my hope was that the way we've done it in the past, that somebody else does it, not the presenter. So maybe see
And I don't know if Charlene has
come in and coordinate.
Bakba, can we get Charlene on the call?
has she, you sent her the link?
No.
Maybe you could get me her contact.
Her email contact or?
Yes.
Okay, let me do that in a second. I've shared on WhatsApp. Let me also call her so that she gets on.
Okay, it's going to be later on, in about 30 minutes or about 20 minutes.
Okay, then.
Into
Let's
it.
Just make sure.
Yeah, so just get her ready, but
okay,
you can take a deep breath. I know this is tough. Yeah.
okay.
So you'll give me a cue on when we should start. Welcome to those who have joined us.
So should we start with a video? Could hold off and play it at a later
in a loop,
point.
huh? Okay, that sounds good. You can play it twice or so as we wait for the others to join.
Oh, okay then. Let's play it.
A peaceful, happy, prosperous, united Malaysia is only possible if we keep Singapore the center of Malaysia.
They want a Malay Malaysia where the Malays are on top, in charge of everything. And you may be allowed to get some business. We wanted gradually, not immediately, a Malaysian Malaysia where as citizens we share the burden and the rewards.
In peace, keep Singapore happy, and make the people feel that they are wanted. Not stepchildren or stepbrothers, but one in the family and a very important member of the family.
The hostility between Singapore's ethnic Chinese and Malays finally erupted into violent clashes on July 21st, 1964. 23 people died and hundreds more were wounded. On the 9th of August 1965, Lee's worst nightmare became a reality, and the separation became official. Lee's dream of a united Malaysia was dashed.
You see, the whole of my adult life, I had believed in Malaysian merger and the unity of these two territories. You know, as a people connected by geography, economics, and ties of kinship, would you mind if we stop for a while?
The one thing that haunted him to the end was Singapore's expulsion from the Federation of Malaysia.
不得已离开，很痛苦，辜负了很多人，号召他们，动员他们，他们相信我们的话，然后放下他们，不得已做的。
A peaceful, happy, prosperous, united Malaysia is only possible if we keep Singapore the center of Malaysia.
They want a Malay Malaysia where the Malays are on top, in charge of everything. And you may be allowed to get some business. We wanted gradually, not immediately, a Malaysian Malaysia where as citizens we share the burden and the rewards.
In peace, keep Singapore happy, and make the people feel that they are wanted. Not stepchildren or stepbrothers, but one in the family and a very important member of the family.
The hostility between Singapore's ethnic Chinese and Malays finally erupted into violent clashes on July 21st, 1964. 23 people died and hundreds more were wounded. On the 9th of August 1965, Lee's worst nightmare became a reality, and the separation became official. Lee's dream of a united Malaysia was dashed.
You see, the whole of my adult life, I had believed in Malaysian merger and the unity of these two territories. You know, as a people connected by geography, economics, and ties of kinship. Would you mind if we stop for a while?
The one thing that haunted him to the end was Singapore's expulsion from the Federation of Malaysia.
不得已离开，很痛苦，辜负了很多人，号召他们，动员他们，他们相信我们的话，然后放下他们，不得已做的。
I think we can go ahead and get started. Thanks very much for the loop.
Okay, that's okay then.
Okay. So I'd like to welcome those who have joined us and will be participating in this seminar. We're very excited about it. It's entitled Moving from Success to Significance. So we're going to be talking about your legacy of leadership. And if you don't mind, I'd like those attending, Wanjuhi and Gad, to please introduce themselves before we start.
Good morning. My name is Wanjuhi Njoroge from Nairobi, Kenya, and I'm very excited to be here this morning. I was truly looking forward to this particular seminar. I think the title is something that resonates with me deeply, and so I'm very happy and looking forward to what's in store. I'm also glad to meet Laila, though virtually, and she's part of the reason I subscribed to this. And I was here on time. I am a class of 2018 Yelp Fellowships valedictorian. I am also currently sitting on the World Economic Forum's Global Shapers Board. This is a global board. I also sit on the UNDP Kenya's Youth Sounding Board. I am an entrepreneur, very passionate about climate action and ensuring that people are at the heart of restoration of forests. So that's me in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanjuhi. Welcome. Gad? Okay, I think he'll join us when we can. I think let's go ahead and get started. I really like your hair. That's the hair of a leader in this photo. It's fantastic.
My hair tells my story.
Wow, that's quite a story then. Great, so we're going to go into this. So the way that we do things at the Aspen Institute, we have a very specific way in which we approach seminars. And the idea is to tease out and give you concepts and tools to think about your own leadership journey. And because it's a seminar, we actually will invite you to read alongside us. And so I'll go ahead, Wanjuhi, and I know it's quite a bit, but let's look through the article, the one that is about Singapore before and after, and just read it together, and you can start.
Sorry, I don't have the article.
Ah, you don't, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see if we can share it with you. A few days ago, let me see if I can find it.
Which article? Perhaps I can share it.
We want to start with the one on Singapore. I think it's the first on your list. Sorry, participants, we had shared a link with you. There was quite some homework. That's the other part of Aspen. You come prepared.
No, I'm actually surprised because even at Leo, they send us the articles before and we're required to read them before.
Oh, I'm sorry you didn't get those. Okay, but that's why we read them together.
Okay.
Welcome, Ignatius. So it's the one entitled Singapore from Third World to First, 2011. Team, if you could send them to the inboxes of the participants once more, it would be easier than reading it on screen.
All right, let me try that out. Well, to save time, perhaps if you have it on your screen, you can share it as we send it to the participants. We will send the readings to the participants. Yeah.
Okay. We can do that. It's a bit dense, but let's do it regardless. And we can also collaborate on how to do this. So here's my screen. So this here we have is the story of Singapore from third world to first. Can everybody see it very clearly and clearly enough to read?
Yes, I can see it clearly.
Okay. Okay, why don't you go ahead and do the introduction and background for us?
Okay. In the 25 years that Lee Kuan Yew led Singapore, the city-state was transformed from a tiny colonial outpost into a thriving global economic center. Per capita GNP has risen from USD to 920 in 1965 to USD 23,300 in 2000. The literacy rate has risen from 72% in 1970 to over 92%. The number of people living in owner-occupied housing rose from 9% of the population in 1970 to 90% in 1990. Singapore's government and public sector are regarded as one of the most efficient and cleanest in the world. Its infrastructure facilities are world-class. All these factors combined contribute to Singapore being ranked amongst the top in terms of global competitiveness and development. Singaporean public sector is considered clean, meritocratic, efficient, and well-structured, despite the fact it does not rank highly on democratic participation indices. The background: founded as a British trading colony in 1819, Singapore remained a British colony until 1963, aside from a period of Japanese occupation during the World War II. In keeping with its historic roots, as a merchant crossroads, Singapore has an ethnically diverse population made up of Chinese, Malays, Indians, Caucasians, and Euro-Asians, as well as other mixed groups and Asians of different origins. In 1959, on winning the election, the Socialist People's Action Party instigated self-government within the British Empire. In 1963, PAP called a referendum in which the country voted to leave British control and join the new Malaysian Federation. Unification was a lifelong dream of PAP leader Lee Kuan Yew. This dream would, however, be short-lived. Independence was imposed, a unique case of modern world, when in 1965, Singapore was expelled from the Federation following the violence in 1964 race riots.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Can we have another participant take us through state transformation, please? Who would like to volunteer? I see we have Ignatius. Ignatius, are you comfortable reading the next segment?
Yes, please. Apologies on the move. So, okay, so I'll just try to expand it. The new sovereign Singapore was an underdeveloped colonial outpost. It had no natural resources, and even after independence, British naval bases on the island provided 1/5 of GDP. Unemployment was high, leading to crime and ethnic violence, and large swathes of the population lived in extremely poor housing, often overcrowded and lacking sanitation. Corruption and crime ran rampant in these conditions. Ethnic tensions ran high. However, a series of measures were put in place to transform the state into a prosperous, functional international interport. These included security. Security was pressing, and Singapore rapidly developed a military capability to stave off external threats. The country also needed to rapidly create internal stability among the discontinued and fragmented popular Singapore had previously been understood as a crossroads. A multicultural trading post, but it needed a national identity. The government worked on the assumption that internal stability, civil obedience, order and rule of law would come about through improved conditions. The catalysts of this cohesion would be a common language, job creation and housing, and saving through market-driven transformation. The government was one of the opinion that providing people with jobs was the most effective way to bring about political and social stability. This attitude highlights the broad and fundamental consideration of the PAP leadership, and stability and security at both macro and micro levels was the primary concern if the viable bedrock was to be created on which a state could be built. Then accountability. From the onset, the PAP leadership targeted corruption as a core problem to earn the support of the people and to rapidly establish the overall environment in which any level of corruption was not tolerated. PAP attacked corruption top down. The Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau, CPIB, instilled stiff penalties for corruption, and incentives to be corrupt were lensed by the high salaries paid to civil servants. Lee also brought the CPIB within the Prime Minister's office, PMO, and the Bureau's director reported directly to him, making the CPIB wholly independent from the Singapore Police Force and other government agencies. In procurement terms, Singapore retained British practices as a way to standardize procurement processes. The Ministry of Finance sought to build a reputation that would be open competition globally for the lowest bidder and value for money, with evaluation and approval decentralized, and the due process becoming increasingly stringent for higher value purchases. Singapore decided to utilize modern information systems technology developed by the West, such as electronic platforms, to minimize cash transactions between citizens and government. This also led to fewer occurrences of corruption, informalities, and made for better monitoring of cash flows.
Okay, you can stop there. Thank you. Let's have somebody else volunteer to go on to human capacity, housing, and citizenship, please. Thank you, Ignatius. Who else do we have in the room? Charlene.
I should start from human capital. Okay, human capacity. Yes. At independence, Singapore had a low-skilled and low-cost workforce, but sought to develop the skills it needed to compete with the region and globally. In partnership with various multinational companies, including Philips of the Netherlands, Vule of Germany, Tata of India, and Seiko and Yokogawa Electric of Japan, the government set up industrial training centers in which young people were taught, for example, precision engineering and the use of machine tools. In schools, the focus was on science and mathematics. Singapore also sent its brightest students to elite universities in the West. Yeah, I don't know how to say that word, the name. Tongdo emphasized that the economic imperative was the driving force of Singapore's education policies. For 30 years after independence, the high industrialized nature of the economy today certainly suggests that these policies achieved their aims. Housing. In 1960, due to the rapidly increasing population, more than 400,000 people were living in overcrowded conditions in ramshackle chop house buildings or in squatters with substandard living conditions. Through the Housing and Development Board, the government began what would become a massive construction project to provide a new accommodation for the large numbers of Singaporeans, either homeless or living in slums. In the first 2 years of the program, over 25,000 housing units were built, more than in the entire previous decade. The project in turn created hundreds of construction jobs and developed a world-class construction industry. See market building below. The combination of employment and improved housing worked to create stability as basic needs were fulfilled. Another important factor was the decision to use private constructors rather than employing construction workers only. This allowed the HDB to supervise the contractors and ensure standards and keep costs low by using a large pool of contractors and different sources of building materials. Citizenship. Prior to the creation of the sovereign state, there was no specific Singaporean identity. After the creation of the state was forced by the 1964 riots, the new government moved aggressively to form a singular Singaporean identity. The government focused on centripetal policies such as language, culture, social and communal behavior, meritocracy, to bind individuals to the state over and above other ethnic groups and alliances. The state also moved aggressively to shape activities, provide jobs, dictate norms of behavior, create savings, and direct spending toward communal goals. Policies carefully fed into each other at the tactical level in order for the communal whole to realize the goals of the public leadership. For example, the Central Providence Fund forced Singaporeans to save for retirement, allowing them to borrow against those savings in order to buy a home in Singapore. This fostered a commitment to citizenship and was a valuable financial instrument for the country.
Thank you, Charlene. I'll ask Samantha, if you're in the room, to take up nation building and start us off on market building. And hosts, please make sure, just check the waiting room to make sure there's nobody waiting to come in.
Nation building.
Sorry, there you go.
Management of ethnicities may have been the area where the most obvious changes have taken place in Singapore. What has remained constant has been a commitment to multiracialism. The four main races, the four main languages and the four main religions receive equal treatment legally. But until the 1980s, ethnic differences were by and large considered as meaningful in private life only. They were downplayed in the political, cultural, and social spheres. The emphasis was on nation building, quote unquote nation building, even if ethnicity Even if ethnicity was mentioned on social spheres, was mentioned on identity cards and was supposed to guide students' choices of the second language of education after English. English was made the national language to position Singaporeans conveniently for partaking in the global economy and make it easier for students to study abroad and return with the relevant global knowledge. Market building. A cornerstone to the PAP's success was a belief that economics would provide the major stabilizing force for the society. The party chose to attend to the economic welfare of the population, believing that increasing individual prosperity through jobs, in part through state-enforced savings, which in turn funded housing and construction, would mitigate ethnic and religious conflict. Three elements of the economic approach were critical to success. One, targeted technical assistance and liberalization. Following independence in 1965, Singapore began promoting an export-oriented development strategy. The PAP leadership sought advice from Dr. Albert Wins, a Dutch economist who had become the chief economist advisor to the Singapore government in 1961. Dr. Albert advised that Singapore should look to attract more investment from abroad and improve its ties with the West so that it would have access to larger markets. A central tenet of the economic reform was economic voluntarism. The concept that economic development would arise through the evolution direction of the people's activities, essentially enabling the market. This was achieved through a number of mechanisms working in concert. Active statutory boards, such as economic development boards, through the mobilization of private savings via the formation of the Compulsory Central Provident Fund, CPF, through important tax incentives and through land and town planning. Consolidation of labor laws. Stringent new labor laws ensured a disciplined and low-cost workforce. The 1968 Employment Act abolished and reduced a number of social benefits linked to overtime pay and paid holidays, while lengthening work time. And the 1968 revised Industrial Relations Bill established as management privilege, the hiring, firing, promotion, internal transfer, illegal and actual very infrequent, an internal transfer of employees, etc. The scope for industrial action was so restricted that strikes became de facto illegal and actually very infrequent. Simultaneously, the only authorized trade union switched to leisure activities, adult education, and cooperative organizations. Real hourly wages were lowered or frozen at best, until well into 1970s, when the new full employment situation restored some of the employees' negotiating powers, a bit on an individual basis. To further enable a conducive market environment, modern infrastructures for the airport, ports, roads, and communication networks were updated, built, and vitalized.
Thank you, Samantha. I'm going to ask Wanjuhi to come back and take us through new industry focus and then start us into key factors.
Okay. New industry focus, finance and construction. Singapore moved into the banking industry to take advantage of the time difference it enjoyed between the closure of the US markets and the opening of the Swiss market. The Economic Development Board lifted foreign exchange restrictions on currency transactions with the rest of the world and repealed interest withholding taxes on deposits from foreigners. Additionally, one of the biggest challenges facing the Singapore after independence was a major shortage of housing. A further issue was simmering racial tension following the riots of 1964. The government saw an opportunity to deal with these problems simultaneously. As described above, the Housing and Development Board, HDB, was created to construct apartments with modern sanitation, electricity, and piped water at affordable prices. Construction firms emphasized learning among their employees and helped form strategies for human resource development and information technology implementation. Key factors. A number of key factors underpinned Singaporean transition. These included authority and leadership. The Singaporean leadership dates back to the post-war period in the 1940s, when a small group of students found each other in England. This group included the core team that would dominate Singaporean politics during the transition, including Lee Kuan Yew, Jo Kang Siew, Hon Siu Sen, S. Raja, that one, and Lim Kim San. The unity of the group and its personal history allowed it to work as a holistic about sacrificing operational ability and to question long-held and ideologies. This group performed as a management team with Lee serving as CEO. He understood the need to reduce the cost of decision-making in order to efficiently drive through the reforms necessary to transform society. Number two, building systems. Singapore benefited from the construction of durable but flexible institutions. During Lee's tenure, the Singapore government successively pushed through at least 4 radical directional changes, from labor-intensive import substitution to labor-intensive export-oriented manufacturing to the entire economy up the value chain, and lastly, turning the focus sharply to infrastructure, human capital, and high technology. Implemented differently, this strategy kept Singapore's economy growing. What's noteworthy is that at each stage, the leadership sought the citizens' input, thus helping to strengthen the people's sense of identity with the vision set out by the leaders.
Thanks very much.
Number 3. Okay, thank you.
Ignatius, please take us through visioning and management.
Visioning. The PAP leadership did not necessarily know how they were going to achieve their vision for Singapore, but they were great students for other countries and keenly aware of what they did not want to be and what they did not want to happen to their society. Lee's comments on the damaging effects of welfare state in Hong Kong and the United Kingdom underpinned a determination to create a society that would work hard to achieve success. Number 4, the management of regional and international environment. Lee did not want certain types of conditional aid, and other things he did want military support were not forthcoming. At heart of these decisions were about PAP retaining control of their direction, the refusal of aid with strings forced PAP into creative problem solving, and in the process, the creation of pragmatic austerity that would serve the management team well over the following years. This set the tone for controlled and sustainable growth, built on solid foundation for fiscal discipline and recognition of internal capabilities and capacity. It also forced the country to develop an internal resilience capable of rapid, steep growth. Number 5, utilizing existing assets. The Singaporean leadership set a clear goal of where and what they wanted to be. At the same time, they borrowed heavily from existing institutional infrastructures, such as the CPIB, and judicial system. Risk Singapore clearly had to change in order to develop a meaningful economic relationship with the West and for internal stability. Continuity was an important message. The symbolic gesture of maintaining the stature of Raffles sent a clear message that business would continue as usual and that investments would be secure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Let me have Charlene come in for pragmatism of values, and then Samantha can take us through the conclusion.
Pragmatism of values. At independence, the PAP, which had been a traditional Leninist party at the time, abandoned communism and moved towards pragmatism. The new direction still maintained a focus on the individual, but from a more pragmatic and paternalistic perspective. The leadership discovered other non-Western sources of thinking to serve modernization and development. Lee brought the concept of Asian values to the world of ideas, a vague concept but a clear attempt to context the universality of human rights and to deride Western vices. While one can argue with the tenets of these beliefs, it was the ability of the leadership to ensure flexibility that allowed for progress to be made.
Conclusion.
Okay. All right, that was quite a bit of work. Thank you for all doing your part. Let me stop the share. So I would like to really encourage you all, if you haven't, to read this book, From Third World to First by Lee Kuan Yew, because he really goes in much more depth into the kinds of choices they had to make, how some of the things that were happening affected him. And it's even available online in PDF if you don't want the real book. But it's really a good read because it shows you that a lot of the things that happened with them are actually directly applicable to our situation. You'll hear often people saying, oh, the Singapore story, they have special circumstances, Africa can't be like that. I disagree quite a bit, but you can judge for yourself. So let's delve into the reading, and in typical Singapore, in seminar style, I'll be asking you to give me some ideas of what stood out for you in this story. What is there that maybe you didn't know before? What was it that surprised you? What popped out in this story?
Maybe I can go first.
Yes, welcome.
This is Onjohe, and I think for me, it's always inspiring reading the story of several Asian countries, and Singapore is one of them. And seeing that they were once struggling with the things that many African countries, including Kenya, are struggling with, such as corruption, such as poverty levels, and having a visionary leader helps them get to where they are today. But I think of great importance to note is that democracy is really not a prerequisite of development. And I say this with a lot of caution. But, and I think I've said this in previous speaking engagements, that for me, it's really what a leader does when they are in office, because you can have a leader who is democratic but does nothing for his country or her country. But then, and I think the case of Germany, for instance, is an important reminder, because we've had Angela Merkel in office for quite some time. But what does that leader do for their countries is, for me, the greater question. And so these are some of the things that stood out for me, how having an intentional leader who has the interest of the people at heart is beautiful. And, you know, I'm at a point in life where I have fallen out of love with my country. I've always been naively patriotic, but I'm at a point where I'm considering utilizing my second citizenship and just packing my bags and leaving my country because I am no longer inspired. I don't even think it's worth fighting for it. And that's a role of leadership, because a leader ought to inspire, hope, inspire, give us reason to sacrifice and work for our country and continue loving it. But to what end? And I think it's quite inspiring.
You've raised so many interesting things there. That's fantastic. Fantastic. Let me probe one. I think because you've brought a lot of insights out that we could all discuss. So one is this idea of pragmatism. I think a lot of you saw this word in the reading, but I think, Wanjohi, you're getting at this because what do you think they mean by pragmatism in this? I think you touched on it. So you're saying it's not so much about labels like democracy or this or that. It's really about a leader with a vision and having very specific things they want to do. So I guess I would ask the others, did you see this? In which ways did you see this group of leaders, and we'll talk about them as personalities later, kind of come outside boxes of the labels that we're used to, and instead craft something new? I see very many names on my screen. Martin wants to say something.
Yes, good morning. Sorry I joined a little bit late. I'm away, I'm 3 hours behind time. I'm in Dublin. But for me, what stood out was the fact that they had to look internally to identify themselves and use their own internal values beyond what the Western structures are. They had to harness the fact that they had to add their own Asian values, and what are those values that they had to incorporate beyond what, like Wanjohi was saying, being defined as structures that apparently are supposed to relate to development, things like democracy. But then for them, certain nuances weren't working with them, for them, given the fact that they're from a different continent, they're faced with these unique challenges and they want to create the transformation. So they had to look internally and harness those values. And then around that is then coupled with a pragmatic approach of, we are leaders, we need to do this based on the values that we see in ourselves to address the thing that we need to change. So I think most times we as Africans, we're still dragging our feet with what we're left with as a way of doing things, than concentrate on what we are and what we need to do. I side with Wanjohi that I always think democracy has a certain facade that doesn't work for us. And like she highlighted, when you're a leader, what degree of intentionality do you have to cause that change? Or are you going to stick to the narrative of, I was democratically elected and I can ignore the reality that is on ground? And we are seeing that with the current trend from Cape Town to Cairo, amongst the crop of young people, is they do not really want to listen to, they are done with the narrative of democracy and politics and everything. They want the authentic change, they want the genuine change. And to me, it is sounding the drums of, let's look inside, let's harness our own strength. Let's forget the politics, let's be pragmatic, let's use our values and transform the society as we should be. So this is what I pick from this.
Okay, thank you, Martin. I'd like to request everybody, I know you might have special circumstances, but if you don't, please, as you speak, do turn on your camera so we can see you. Martin, I'd like to challenge what you're saying a little bit. Indeed, they do look like they dug really deep to, in fact, they talk about a certain place where they even asked the public as they were designing these policies. But do they toss aside, one, their British legacy, and two, did they lock themselves off from the international community?
I don't think that Well, I didn't get the full reading, but I don't think they locked themselves outside, away from the international community. It is always important, according to my understanding, to collaborate and to see what you can, to leverage the strength that stand from your other people and see how you can use that to actually be intentional and transform your own society. The danger with the too much reliance, I think what that statement is the danger of too much reliance on the other systems. Mm-hmm. That is what I think should be coming out. Mm. It does not mean we have to completely alienate ourselves from other people and other countries. You know, we have to know what it is that they have that can add value to cause this change. We cannot. It's an open world. It's open economies now, but it cannot be an open economy if your very own are not empowered, are not transformed. So what can I learn from Kenya? What can I learn from other countries, basing on the values that we have reflected on internally? How can they boost those values to propel us to the levels that we want?
So just digging a little bit deeper on this concept of pragmatism, before we move on as leaders, we've said that they looked around and they said democracy as it's fashioned out there might not be exactly what works for us. So they designed something else. And in a way, Lee Kuan Yew has gotten quite some flack for that. Although him and his administration and now the successor administration are very, very popular. But let's talk a little bit about capitalism and socialism. So we've talked about democracy and not as one axis where they picked and chose. We've talked about this idea of the British legacy. They kept some and discarded some, kept some Chinese, Asian values and discarded some. And then what about socialism and capitalism? Which one were they? How do you see pragmatism playing out in Singapore around that? What are some of the things they did that you would say are anti-socialist and which would you say are anti-capitalist? Well, welcome, Katya.
Thank you very much. Apologies for being late.
Any further thoughts on pragmatism around the economic system? What kind of system does Singapore have? In which ways is it socialist? In which ways is it capitalist?
I'm not an economist by profession, but I can relate to reality in life. And
you sound a little bit more muffled than before, Martin.
What?
You sound a bit more muffled than you were before.
Oh, am I clear now?
Yes, yes.
I was saying I'm not an economist by profession, but I'll try to, I can relate to the dynamics of his life. I'm not entirely a person who believes that people should just get things out of their ability without input. So I'm not entirely a socialist, or I'm not one who believes in the toxic capitalist that is of the Western business or economics. And I think I just believe that when you create authentic structures and you empower people to have sources of income with genuine and intentional systems and accountability, capitalism can always make sure that it supports all the setup of the social structures such that every single citizen gets the benefit of the taxes. The reason why we're talking about we demonize capitalism is because of everything else that has been related to it, like tax evasion, people, tax havens and things like that. And because of that, the social systems that are supposed to benefit from what would have been these taxes are left, crippled. And so toxic capitalism, or what most of what the West defines as capitalism, is toxic. But because I believe in working hard, but also believe in being rewarded, and that rewarding can come from authentic, genuine systems. So if you have systems that are accountable, I can know where my tax goes. I mean, every time I look at my payslip, it is very, very annoying that you pay so much taxes, including a local government tax, and I don't have water in my area for 2-3 weeks. Now, these are very simple social structures which I'm supposed to be accessing, right? If genuinely my taxes were accountable for, I shouldn't be having these issues. So I believe in checked capitalism to support social structures. And I think that is what Singapore does. Much as there's that marginalized percentage that is not accessing the entire picture as the rest of us see it, because I watched an in-depth into the whole economic transformation of Singapore, and there's a marginalized population, but the leaders still are working to address those challenges. Is that intentionality to also address those things? So people have to work hard because we build the nation by working. So by establishing these systems that are checked, authentic, accountable, then we can always find a hybrid model that can always work.
Okay. So I think just to put a lid on this segment, what we learned from Singapore is that, and this is for us as African leaders, as we try to accelerate development and take what we can out of this particular case, is this idea that we must design. You take the best you can from the West. Remember that the group of leaders, a lot of them had Western education. So they went and they also made sure that they sent members of the civil service and others to the West to get education. But when they came back, they designed something that took the best in their view from the British legacy, from the Asian values, from democracy, from not democracy, from socialism, because they really have a strong safety net in Singapore. They have strong healthcare. You saw what they did about their education system, how much of an investment they've made in it. At the same time that they have a very strong economy, a market-based economy. So they created something new. And I think one of the lessons of Singapore is really this idea as young leaders to be very careful about labels and getting stuck in a box and taking everything wholesale from any one ideology and just customizing what it is that you believe is best for your people in collaboration with them. The second thing, did you know that there was this young group of leaders who, did you catch that they met in university and they had a high level of trust and they came back and transformed their nation? So yes. That's another lesson around the importance of a group of leaders. And how you as the young leaders that we're nurturing into this position, it's not so much, because they didn't say there's these other people. I mean, of course they came and they found something there that they toppled with a lot of vision, as you saw in the video that we looked at, but they are the ones who took it among themselves to be the change. So one of the things that we experience a lot is this idea that there's grown-ups in the room, right? Or there's somebody who's coming to fix it. And that you need to talk to those grown-ups about fixing it, as opposed to realizing that you are the one that we're looking to. You are the one we're looking to for inspiration. So the Singapore story tells us that. I'd like also for us to, and I guess Wanjuhi might be best for this, but we can all help her. Did you catch what was I want us to think about this idea of before and after. So what was Singapore? You know how you see those things of an extreme makeover, right? So what was Singapore before? Let's share some of the attributes that Singapore had in the before Lee Kuan Yew and his friends, the young leaders.
I think one of the things, and this is one of the things that stood out for me is a housing problem. From 9% to 90% in 1990, I was like, what? And it's truly inspiring because this is a problem that we are in Kenya. As a young woman, I want to acquire property, I want to start investing, but I look at the price of land in Nairobi and some of the areas that I would want to own land, and I'm like, oh my goodness, is this even a reality? And seeing that the Kenyan government, what they were calling the Big Four agenda, housing was one of the agendas that they were keen on. Of course, the thinking through the Big Four agenda wasn't practical, but had it been practical, it would have solved many problems. But I mean, reading that particular part, I nearly jumped. I think it was quite inspiring.
Okay, the one before is 9% housing ownership. The after is 90%. Anything else? Let's get some more stats.
Oh, it has to be stats. I was just going to share on.
Go ahead. Any way you want
to. I just found that it stuck out to me, especially because it seemed like before Singapore was very, they're very tribal, for lack of a better word. And I think, it's not that I think in Kenya, that's we're very tribal and we're very, so I love how in the nation building agenda, they sought to downplay it in the political, cultural, and social spheres. So yes, even if you belong to, this certain ethnicity, it was downplayed constantly, as opposed to what we see here in Kenya, where it's heightened on the political, on the cultural, on the social spheres. So I think if we're to borrow that and put it in the context of Kenya, the leaders that come going forward need to have a nation building agenda where it doesn't matter what tribe or ethnicity you come from. I mean, it's acknowledged that yes, this is who you are, but it doesn't hinder you from prospering. It doesn't hinder you from being able to just, achieve better. There should be a unifying agenda for future leaders. I think that really stuck out.
The interesting thing with Singapore, you really picked on something there, is that while they de-emphasized it more and more on the political stage, economically, they have a very strong tribal agenda, in the sense that even when they do the housing the housing schemes, they make sure that every apartment block, if it's 80% Chinese, 15% Malay, across the board, and that opportunity, they keep a very close eye on that. So it's a very interesting approach to nation building. And they even believe that the housing, to go back to Anjohi's point, I think you might have noticed how they said that owning a home gives everybody a stake. And no matter how young you are, as soon as you approach adulthood, they make sure you have what they call a starter home so that everybody has something, right? Thanks so much for that, Samantha. Anything else around before and after? So before, 9% home ownership, 90% after. Before, tribal and very tribal politics. After, detribalization. Anything else before and after?
I think for me, I would just strictly speak much more to the transformation in the economy at large, because so one thing he focused on is to understand economics at large, to make sure that avoid foreign debt, do as much as you can to export, because it transformed the economy from to just be more of debt-free and surplus. So like right now, they export the most electronics, I think, and he planned long-term at the end of the day. They didn't come, like the plans didn't come immediately. They came after a long time, after knowing the basics of economics, what to drive my economy, what will make my people be better at any time. So he thought of long term, knowing well, understanding what economics mean. At the end of the day, he tried to avoid, like for example, the debt piece, where he said he will just do as much as he can to just generate revenue for the economy from inside, so that he can do much more of exports and they get that surplus economy. So he planned long term, but what stood out for me is that he understood economics. He understood the principles of, if I'm to get foreign debt, what will that impact my economy? What will that bring to the economy? So he understood the basics of economics, but he planned long term. It didn't happen overnight. That's what really stood out for me.
So the discipline, the expertise, and then this long view. Thank you, Ignatius. So these are the combinations together that ended up delivering Singapore from this GNP in 1965 of $920 all the way to 23,300. And today, Singapore is actually one of the most wealthy countries from a per capita point of view. I need not go into some of the challenges that we're facing around debt and economic discipline, but this tells you again what a vision can do from getting you between before and after. So what I would like you to think about in your leadership journey, we've talked about pragmatism. We've talked about having a team of young people or peers who you trust and who you have a joint vision with. And we've also talked about before and after. And what I would like you to think about when you're after this, what is your before and after? What is your arena where you're going to say, before I came into this place, I found it like this, and afterwards it was like this. And it has to be concrete, right? So your leadership journey, when you think about your legacy and moving from success, because we say if you're in this room with us right now, you're already successful. We're trying to move you to significance. And significance comes with legacy. But for you to be able to do this, you need to think very strategically around where it is you're going to have impact because of your particular set of circumstances, where you find yourself, but also what are your particular skill sets and opportunities to have a measurable impact on something. Please, let's emphasize that measurable, right? So you need to know, before I got there, it was like this. After I left, it was like this. And I would ask you to please read this when you have more time. And then if you have even more time, I strongly encourage you to read the entire book to really understand some of these before and after for them. But I'd like to use this with the time that we have left to explore before and after for our region and ourselves. But before we go into that, I wanted us to look really quickly to do a quick framing exercise, which Charlene will lead us through, so that we can position ourselves through a survey to really understand where we are as the people that are in this room. And I hope that we'll hear Juanita's voice at some point, and Katia as well. But let's just do the survey at present. Charlene, maybe you can take us through, or the team.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Please go to the Mentimeter link that you have received.
Sorry, Charlene, where? Thank you.
Is everyone there?
Charlene, it says the quiz is not open.
Oh, Karina, could you please share go to the second link.
In the chat, okay.
Yes, the second link. Are we there?
Yeah.
I am.
Yes, we're here. and
Okay.
managed to open.
Okay, great. Sorry, just give me a minute. Okay. Can you all see the questions? It says only 2 people are here. Could everyone please go to the link?
Yeah, I can see the question. I think the first question is how many of the world's 1-year-old children today have been vaccinated?
Yes.
That is not the question I see. Am I at the wrong link? The question I see is in all low-income countries across the world today, how many girls finish primary school?
Goodness. Has the question changed? Because you're meant to be answering this. I don't understand what's happening. Yes, Nkacha, you would have to be looking at the second link.
Okay. So it's not the factfulnessquiz.com.
No, it's not. Let me just share the link again so
All right,
everyone
thank
goes
you.
to the correct thing.
Okay, thank you. Great, got it.
Is everyone looking at in all low-income countries across the world today, how many girls finish primary school?
Yes.
I think maybe the questions as you go on, because they come in different numbers. I think I might be ahead, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
I think mine is still on how many of the world's 1-year children today have been vaccinated against some disease.
I think we're all looking at different things.
Charlene, is it the same link? Because I'm still stuck where Wanjuhi is stuck. And it's just refreshing the next question, but I'm not seeing the second question.
But it says only one person is at the. This is very confusing. I'm so sorry for the confusion, people.
I'm wondering, Charlene,
yes,
whether we should maybe try and do the factfulness quiz from online.
Maybe let's try and do that
But maybe a
online.
quicker way, where you just share your screen, and then we can all guess together and then go to the answer together. Like go through together.
Let me. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. Can everyone see this?
That looks great, Charlene.
Yes, yes, we can.
Cute
Yes, we
kids.
can see.
Yes.
Okay. So in all low-income countries across the world today, how many girls finish primary school? I guess you can share your answers in the chat. Someone has to tell me what people are saying because I can't look at the chat while I'm sharing.
Samantha says 20, when Juhi says 40.
Anyone else have an answer?
And Katia says 80. She wants her own survey.
Okay, let's try each. Let's try one of your answers. Let's go with 20%. Oh, whoops. Sorry, should have been looking at test and answer so we can see the correct thing.
I think it's more fun this way, except for them trying to sell us the book in the middle.
Okay. So we think maybe 20%. It's actually 60.
Ooh.
Where does the majority of the world population live? Low-income countries, middle-income countries, high-income countries. What do we think?
Definitely low-income countries.
You think low-income countries? Okay. Let's see if that's correct. Actually, middle-income countries. The majority of people live in middle-income countries. The definitions of the three income groups are intentionally left out of the question, since the aim of factfulness is to investigate how people interpret the term. So I think we all think about what low and middle and high income countries are differently. In the last 20 years, the proportion of the world's population living in extreme poverty has almost doubled, remained more or less the same, or almost halved. What do we think?
Yeah.
Anyone want to answer?
I'll go with almost doubled.
You think it has almost doubled? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see if that's correct.
Almost
halved. What is the life expectancy of the world today? Is it 50 years, 60 years, or 70 years?
70 years.
Okay, anyone else have an idea?
I keep failing, but looking at the diseases and now COVID, I would go with 50. But I need the book.
Okay, let's see if Ignatius is right. And he is. Even with the diseases and COVID, our life expectancy is at 70 years. There are 2 billion children in the world today, aged 0 to 15 years old. How many children will be there in the year 2100, according to the United Nations? Is it 4 billion, 3 billion, or 2 billion? What do we think?
4 billion.
Anyone have an answer?
I think 2 billion.
Is it 2 billion? Okay. Let's see if that's correct. It's 2 billion.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 billion.
Just one. Wipe my tears.
The UN predicts that by 2100, the world population will have increased by another 4 billion people. What is the main reason? Are there going to be more children aged below 15? Or more adults aged 15 to 74? Or will there be more very old people aged 75 and older?
More adults. I think the kids now will grow, so we'll have more adults, I think.
Okay. Anyone else have an alternative answer?
I would also go with more adults, 15 to 74.
Okay, so we feel strongly about that. Okay. And we're correct. The UN experts calculate that just 1% of the population increase will come from 0.37 billion more children. Okay. And 69% from 2.5 billion more adults. So we're very correct. How did the number of deaths per year from natural disasters change over the last 100 years? Has it more than doubled, remained about the same, or decreased to less than half?
Decreased. The reason I know is because I read a report, I think like 2 weeks ago.
That it has decreased to less than half.
Yeah, because of the vaccinations that were going on, because the high mortality rate was coming from Africa, I think. I don't know, but I think it's decreased.
And you're correct. But you had prior knowledge, so there's that. There are roughly 7 billion people in the world today. Where do they live? Is it 1 billion in the Americas, 1 billion in Europe, 1 billion in Africa, and 4 billion in Australia and Asia, or 1 billion in the Americas, 1 billion in Europe, 2 billion in Africa, 3 billion in Australia and Asia? Or option C, 2 billion in the Americas, 1 billion in Europe, 1 billion in Africa, and 3 billion in Australia and Asia. Oh, does anyone have an answer?
So I think Asia has the most, and Africa. So I don't know where the high number is between Africa and Asia. I'd go with that option.
So
Asia
A,
has
B, or
more.
C? Which option are we going with, A, B, or C?
I think C.
I will also go with C.
You're wrong.
Oh.
It's the first option. How many of the world's 1-year-old children today have been vaccinated against some disease? 20%, 50%, or 80%?
80%.
Anyone else have an answer?
80%.
I feel like only Ignatius and Wanjuhi are participating. Does anyone else think of an alternative answer to this?
Yeah, it's 80% or so.
Okay, let's go with that.
Bahati, please mute. Bahati Scholastic.
And we're correct, 80%. Worldwide, 30-year-old men have spent 10 years in school on average. How many years have women of the same age spent in school? Sorry?
6.
9 years.
You think 9, no? Anyone
I
else?
think 9 or 6, but I think 9. Don't know.
Anyone else with an idea?
I think I'll go with 6, but this is truly guesswork.
Okay. Let's go with 9. And that was correct. In 1996, tigers, giant pandas, and the black rhinos were listed as endangered. How many of these 3 species are more critically endangered today? Anyone have an answer? 2 of them, 1 of them, or none of them?
2 of them.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, 2 of them.
None of them.
That's a lie. The rhinos are still endangered.
The black rhinos?
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah.
I think I would also go against that answer.
I'm
it's the
actually
white
against
one.
it.
I think it's the white that's.
The
No,
white
even the
rhinos are the
black.
ones that's endangered.
I love this.
No, I disagree.
You're very
We are
convinced
wrong.
of your answer.
Yeah.
I think this test was done some years way back.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't
perhaps.
think the person who did it is in touch with reality. They're trying to prove a point.
Maybe
Something
you
they
should
funded
share
work.
different stats with them. You can create your own factfulness quiz with correct stats of today. How many people in the world have some access to electricity? 20%, 50%, 80%?
Some access.
Some access 80.
Sorry?
80%.
Some access is 80.
It's 80.
But you see them saying 50.
It's 80%.
Okay.
Global climate experts believe over the next 100 years, the average temperature will get warmer, remain the same, or get colder.
Warmer.
Anyone else with a different idea?
Yeah, get warmer.
We're confident it will get warmer.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see what your results are after doing this out of the 13. You got 8 out of 13. It's not so
Better
bad.
than most. Better than most.
Better than most.
Not so bad given that some of their answers were
wrong.
Yes. So because we don't have much time and we have to close, I think what I'd like to do is to try and pull together all of this for all of us. If you look at the article, The Myth of Us versus Them, did anybody read it who can give us just the highlights and the take homes? Is there anyone who had a chance to look at it? So what this factfulness quiz is trying to show us, and this is what is then captured within the article, is that many of us have an idea of the world as being developing world versus non-developing world. And us in this room, we consider ourselves squarely in the developing world. And there's still quite some outdated ideas around how poverty works in the world. The reality when you look at the statistics, and of course, as we've said in this group, I think part of why people are resisting this partially is because there are really a lot of nuances in this conversation. But what has happened over the last 100 years, and they'll take you through this in the article when you get a chance to look at it, is that we have succeeded in really, so the first thing that we're trying to shift towards is seeing the world in levels. And if you look across the world, there's level 1, who are the kind of people who their cooking is with 3 stones, they live in a mud hut. And these are what you would call indicators of extreme poverty. And these are the ones who correlate roughly to the $2 a day statistic that we all know. And that group we had until COVID-19, over the last century, succeeded in reducing to about 10% of the world population. So it's been a dramatic improvement of the people who are living at level 1. A lot of people who were in level 2 before have moved into level 2 and 3. And at each of those levels is indicators, the kind of house you live in. And this is across the world, whether you're in Indonesia or Uganda or Senegal, all level 2 people's livelihoods kind of look the same. And then there's level 3, which is now going up into the middle class. And then you have level 4, who are very, who are wealthy. The ones we think of as kind of the top 1% aren't even, in level 4. They're really, really at the top of level 4. So if you understand that the world is beginning to look like this, what this article was going to take us through is really an understanding of how we need to reframe the way in which we think about economic progress and how we as leaders in this room could really engage with moving our populations up that chain or that level of steps. In that, I would want you to really think about your before and after in light of understanding that, because of course, within all of the different levels, there is what I would say assumptions around access to healthcare, access to the education, the quality of that education. And it would be good when we have a chance to discuss which of those levels you would like to situate yourself in as you think about your own legacy. Is there one of these different areas in which I feel that I think Wanjohi had said that for you, climate is a very important aspect and emphasis. So for you, within all these different indicators, once you understand the facts and the dynamics within that segment, which lever is it that you can focus your life or your time on? And nobody's saying you have to do one thing your whole life, but you could say that for the next project of my career and my life, I will focus on maybe it's governance moving from 2% of people understand civic education to 10% or something like that. But then the big take home I wanted was to bring it back to Lee Kuan Yew, because with them, they had statistics that they worked with to work on. But I wanted to, those of you who saw the video or who are able to read, there's a famous video of Lee Kuan Yew crying. And it was kind of captured in this video. Do any of you know what is it that was the biggest disappointment of his life?
Yes.
Hati, do you have an idea?
Not yet.
Yeah, I'm sorry that you missed the video. But what had happened is that originally, the group of people that Lee Kuan Yew was leading with, they had a vision that they were going to create a federation called the Malay Federation. And Singapore was going, it's kind of, when you think of us in the East African community, it was almost like they were going to have Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and all together there was going to be this federation. Within it, they were going to have a customs union. Everybody was going to be equal within that union. But what happened, because of a lot of racial tensions, which culminated in some riots, Singapore got expelled from this federation. And because his whole life, Lee Kuan Yew's vision had been to strengthen that union and that they were going to prosper together. And remember, at this time, Singapore was nothing. They were this backwater island. They were poor, they were desperate. There were just a few Chinese people on an island, some traders. And if those of you who know, it's actually a city. It's not even really a country, very small. And so they felt very vulnerable. And in their minds, they didn't see a vision different from themselves as part of this Malay Federation. So when they were expelled, that's where you see him in the video, even having to stop the video to cry.
Yeah.
Just he needed some time because he was so broken. But I think as we look at COVID-19, and this is the third article in your pack, because you have seen that we have made progress as a globe, except on warming, where we have really moved backwards. But even that one, we are, at least through the Paris Accord and other things, we're beginning to move forward. Even though we had gotten to a certain level of a lot of work over 100 years as a human race, you will realize that COVID, the predictions are we are all going to slip back. And if you think of those levels of level, we said there were fewer people in level 1 who had moved into level 2 and 3. We're expecting that a lot of people in level 3 will move back into level 2, and some in level 2 will move back into level 1. So I want you to think of this as a parallel with Lee Kuan Yew's idea that in spite of we had been moving forward in this way, a huge setback has come. But you see that in the end, him and his friends were able to galvanize themselves, and they still, over time, over several decades, delivered for their people. So I'd like you, when you have a chance to look at those readings, go through them in this context, and try to see how you can link that together with COVID being our big setback. and how we can continue to get back on track towards the legacies that each of you are trying to leave and the plan that you're trying to create for yourselves. I can see we're being warned. I'm sorry we ran out of time for starting late, but I'd like you to just very quickly go around, tell us one thing that you've taken away from this. And I want you to commit to doing this work, read the readings, apply it to your life. And we're hoping to see great things from you soon. From the order on my screen, let's start with Samantha quickly. A parting shot, please.
I guess it's just to think about my next step and really my before and after. I think that's what I've taken away from it. So this is where I'm at. So where do I want to go and how does that look like?
Thank you, Samantha. Scholastica, a parting shot?
Yes.
Just to say goodbye, 1 minute. Anything you've taken away from this meeting?
Okay, goodbye, everyone. I don't know, are you getting me? Okay, I say goodbye for everyone, and I'm happy to be part of this channel. I admit I was very late, but yeah, I'm very happy.
Okay, thanks, Scholastica. Ignish, a takeaway?
I think takeaway for me, and the journey I've just been trying to figure out, is how well a normal person, a local person, will understand economics or understand the things that affect us in the country. I'm lucky I'm in the economics field and I'm in business, so it's just find that platform on how well to make people understand how an impact of everything has on the economy and even the sugar that you purchase, but also plan long term. And if there's a way to just find out eliminating the things that cause us problems like corruption and supporting a way of handling those, but majorly it's just being more informative to a local person, or the normal person, to understand economics and how they impact a nation at large.
So for you, that area seems to you like a place where you have an interest and can make a difference. That's great. Wanjohi, a takeaway from this session?
I think mine is how to remain true to self and true to country. And as a young person, this is one of the hardest things, especially like now when Kenya is going through the BBI process. As a young person, you're torn between, do you lose yourself and support government and make some money out of it? Or do you continue being true and following the process, which is painful? But listening to today's conversation and looking at Lee Kuan Yew and the group that they formed together when they went to the UK and they came back and transformed their country. I think that's an inspiration, and I want to remain true to self and true to country. And I'm happy that we're able to convene and have such discussions, because this is a constant reminder that we must remain true to the vision. In as much as the journey is rough and really at times unrewarding, it's wise to just remain true and faithful to the vision. And I think that's my commitment. And thank you to Leo Africa for creating a platform where we can be vulnerable and be honest and still hold each other accountable and guide each other on the path.
Thank you, Wanjohi. That's beautiful. Nkatia, a takeaway. Okay, we'll give him a break. And then Charlene, any takeaway as we close?
I think my biggest takeaway is to not think as leaders that you have all the answers. You can always pick from what other people have tried and tested to create what works for you, and what maybe doesn't. It's also okay to fail and come back and reevaluate and pick ideas from different people.
So less pressure, huh? That's great. That's great. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us. We are being warned that we're out of time. I really appreciate you joining. And I really bless you as you go out on your leadership journeys. We will be there with you as Leo and the Africa Leadership Initiative. And we look forward to seeing your before and after. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you too.
Okay, bye. Bye, Wanjani.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.